episode of The Human Equation. I sit down with Professor Posner, who is a recipient of the National Medal of Science and one of the most cited scientists in human history. Professor Posner's pioneering research on attention has reshaped how our understanding of awareness, emotion, and consciousness itself. Together, we explore the space where science meets the soul, where attention shapes the way we love, grieve, and experience the world around us. We talk about the brain's quiet architecture of focus and how it constructs meaning from chaos and what it reveals about the essence of human. This conversation is about the light of the mind and the depths of feeling and the timeless questions of what thought becomes, when thought becomes emotions and emotions become understanding. Thank you for joining us, Professor Posner. It's been quite the setup.
It's been a pleasure.
Right. Um, so, one of the first things that I wanted to ask you when I was thinking about speaking to you was what it was like, excuse me, meeting Barack Obama and, him putting that medal on your neck. Did it feel like all of the effort and work, your life's work, was being recognized? And, was it that moment where you realized that, I made the right choice in the path that I chose to take my life?
Well, it was a great honor to receive the medal from Barack Obama. The proudest moment, actually, that I had of it was when he deliberately in his talk recognized the role that cognitive science has played in research. Argue that I've influenced any of his policies or thoughts, but I'm glad he recognized cognitive science as an important scientific contribution.
Right, right, right. Um, was there anything that you could pick up in his uh, speech or your interactions with him that you could define as an exceptional quality?
Yes, he spent a long time with the professor of astronomy who also received a Medal of Science. And the reason was he was having a reception for young people and they were going to discuss some aspects of science. And he wanted to see what this professor could contribute. And I thought, well, that shows that he respects even the youngest people with whom he meets and he makes an effort to prepare. It was remarkable.
Right, right, right. Um, you know, you recently wrote a book called Developing the Brain that sort of captures your life's work and, on the cover has had service, teaching, and research. What I'm particularly struck by is the picture for the research, where you have a child and, in a very endearing look. Does that person have a special significance to you, or?
It isn't a real child, it's a doll.
I see.
And yes, it was very significant because we spent several years working on the brains of very young children, trying to understand some of the early processes in the development of language, which begins even before birth.
Right.
And I had collaborators working on these topics who were living in Eugene, including Stan DeHaan and his wife, Ghislaine, and they worked with the young children as well. So a lot of progress was made, although there's much left to be understood.
Right. Let's sort of take a deeper dive into your work on attention and explore that a little bit. But before, could you just give the people around the world who are listening a very simple definition of what is attention? What is it? How can one define attention, or you know, you know, what is the best intuition to sort of capture such a complex term?
The complexity of the term is mirrored by the fact that there are several independent brain networks that are involved in attention. The three that I've studied in more detail, and many other people as well, is that the network that's involved in obtaining and maintaining the alert state. Many people with serious brain damage can't arise to a full level of alertness, and that happens involves the brain network, which includes the brain's locus ceruleus, the source of the norepinephrine in the brain, which activates neurons at various levels of the brain and maintains and helps maintain a full alert state. And there's another network involved in attending to external stimuli, or what we call orienting of attention, in which we, for example, for a visual stimulus, either place that stimulus on the fovea or attempt to attend to it even when it's not placed on the fovea.
Right.
And that's the orienting network. It's involved, the brain's orienting network is involved in stimuli that are auditory or somatosensory, as well as visual, although in each case they operate on a particular sensory system. So if you're attending to a visual system, you have operating on the visual brain, but if you're attending to somatosensory information, that is to touch, you operate on a quite different network, but the underlying orienting is the same network. And then we have a more complex executive brain network, which involves many frontal and uh, cortical and subcortical areas, and allows us to maintain a particular orientation to the world by inhibiting things that might interfere. For example, many areas of the brain are active at the same time, but if we want to maintain some particular direction of thought, we inhibit those other areas. This brain network, which I call the executive brain network, is involved in that ability to inhibit the other brain networks and make them interfere less with the main line of thinking that you're trying to pursue.
Right, right, right. It's quite remarkable. You know, when you think about attention and you think about the younger generation, specifically those who grew up on social media and such incredible increase and influx of information, do you think that the way by which their brains are wired is different from the way people in the 60s or 50s or back in the day their brains are wired?
Well, the brain is very sensitive to its experience and adjusts to the experience that it has. When we say wired, we mean the connectivity, but that doesn't mean that it's immutable.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you're raised in a environment with many different inputs and so on, and you're doing a lot of switching, your brain will adjust to that, but it can adjust to other environments as well if you practice in maintaining some central line of thought. And for example, reading some a book where you have to deal with what's happened in this book and with the world that it's created,
Right.
then that will also rewire the brain to a certain degree. So you can maintain several different orientations by essentially realizing the brain is very sensitive to the environment in which it's raised.
Right, right, right. Um, when when you think about your childhood and you growing up as a in America, um, what was the earliest memory that you think you remember? And to me, it almost feels like I was conscious of that experience, and because I had some increase or some saliency, or in other words, that my attention was heightened right in that moment. When I think about my childhood and certain memories that I remember, um, perhaps that's not the way to think about attention, but you know, are there moments where you are aware that you are attending to something, and there are moments where you're attending to something but you are unaware? And could that be related somehow to like people's earliest childhood memories? And you know,
That's a multi-part question. And
sorry about that.
early development, there's quite a bit of development of a brain structure called the hippocampus, which is responsible for storing certain types of memories.
Yeah.
Even early in infancy, it is possible to have experience and to show you remember it by your behavior. Several recent experiments in the last 5 years have provided convincing evidence of this. However, what we might call bringing to mind experience that you have seems to depend upon the development of the hippocampus, which uh, makes it difficult to recall or bring to mind experiences that happened in the first couple years of life.
Hmm.
Nonetheless, what you've learned during that period could still influence your behavior, even though you yourself cannot recall those experiences having occurred.
Right. So just to be clear, you're saying that the reason why, from a neuroscientific point of view, people don't remember a lot of their childhood memories is because of what?
The development of the hippocampus, which takes over, which occurs during the first few years of life, and the hippocampus becomes a critical structure in storing of memories that we can bring to mind
I
as a
see.
conscious
I
experience.
see. So it's the hippocampus that hasn't yet developed,
Hasn't yet developed sufficiently.
right? And so that's the
It
reason.
does exist, but it hasn't developed sufficiently to really play its role in the retrieval of conscious memories.
That's remarkable. I never knew that actually. Um, on a more personal note, right? You, um, of course, I adore you in many ways, both as a man, but also as a scientist. And one of the things that I find very powerful and striking is your humanity and your empathy and your compassion. In one of the pictures you have on your book, Developing a Brain, A Life in Psychology, you have this part called teaching. And, can you sort of go into that a little bit as to why it's important for you to pay things forward and how you can still become a great scientist, but also a great human being?
Well, that's a tall order, but of course, I got into psychology primarily because I wanted to teach it.
Hmm.
And I was looking for a field I could teach. And as you'll see if you read this memoir, I tried physics and got an undergraduate degree at the University of Washington in physics. I really enjoyed studying physics, but I knew that I didn't have sufficient capabilities to teach it. Looked for a field that I could understand sufficiently.
Yeah.
I migrated first to biology and then to psychology, and the physics stood in good stead. It was helpful when we began to use brain imaging to look at the human brain. The fact that I kind of understood a little about the physics of the machinery we used was very helpful in uh, helping my colleagues at Washington University in St. Louis to develop the methods that we use to try to bring common human tasks like reading and other common tasks to see how they activated various areas of the brain.
Right. So it's sort of you found your place, right? Or you found your path that you wanted to sort of you could teach, but also do research and so on. Interesting. Um, when you think about the um, the current state of science as far as funding or as far as just the climate in the world in general. Of course, you can speak of as freely as you want, or however you want to answer. But you and I are aware that a lot of scientific funding are being cut, and it affects very different groups of people, right? What are your general thoughts on that? And I think you also are writing a paper, or you wrote a paper. I'm not sure if you published it or not, about the effects of the Trump administration on scientific output and so on. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or?
I'd be happy to. It has not been published, but I still hope to publish it. I've tried several times. It's a paper that tries to see that authoritarian governments in general suppress the attempt to, and in many cases succeed in suppressing the resolution of conflicts between competing ideas. This is the basis of the executive attention network. And as such, I believe that authoritarian governments might actually destroy important aspects of the human brain. This is not generally realized. I don't have definitive evidence, but I do in the paper present some evidence from human work and mouse work that suggests that the lack of conflict between ideas in contention does inhibit the development of this executive attention network, which would have vast consequences on the behavior of people who arise in these governments. I hope we could get sufficient scientific tests of these ideas to see if in fact they hold up.
Wow, that is a remarkable and powerful hypothesis. And it speaks again to this idea that you can't understand the biological system without understanding the environment by which it was nurtured or being raised or being modulated under. Um, what are your thoughts on AI? I know you mentioned that you and Professor Hinton, who just won the Nobel Prize, are friends. Do you think that AI is a tool? Do you think that it's a pro or anti-humanity? Do you think it's just another evolution in human development? Right. In the next 100 years, do you think that humans will be cyborgs of some sort, right? Whereas some will be attached, some sort of prosthesis, or so on. What are your general thoughts on that?
Well, I do think AI is a remarkable tool. It can help human beings deal with complex issues where there's much evidence in the literature and hard to summarize it. It has to be used properly, and properly it can be a tool that can be very useful. If there is the development of general intelligent AI, which is what Hinton fears, that the success of this might jeopardize the human abilities to control things in the world, although I feel that that might happen, but humans have really done some pretty bad things in the world. Maybe AI might help us do better things. That might be very important for our survival. Right now, AI is consuming such high levels of energy, mostly produced by fossil fuels, we might not survive long enough even to see the threat from AI. But I look at it as a tool that can be used appropriately and be helpful for many things.
Um, I think if I were to guess your age, I would say you're probably 18.
Well, my age exactly is 89.
Yeah, and so you are reaching the doorsteps of 90, and what I find remarkable and beautiful in many ways is how sharp your cognitive infrastructure is. And I can still hear the passion in your arguments. And you know, um, what do you think the secret of longevity is?
Well, the passion is still there. The cognitive processes are more questionable. You do slow down a lot as you age, and I'm no exception. And you do have some more information possibly available, but it may not compensate for the processes that are available to younger people. No, nonetheless, I'm grateful to have had such a long life as I've so far had.
And so, what would be that secret
No
to?
secret.
No secret. Okay. Um, you know, when you think about, my parents or my family, I come from a very religious family, and so I am typically consumed with the question of destiny, the idea of journey. These are things that I think about a lot. And so, as we close out this first episode of the Human Equation podcast, um, you know, what do you think? What advice, let's say, would you give the younger generation who are on whatever path they're on, whether it be within science, within the industry, within their respective, undergrad or graduate degrees, or just, life and in general? Like, what advice would you give? Um, I think I know the answer because you're very much someone that understands the relativity of people and the heterogeneity of and how people are different in many ways. But there's one secret that you could sort of impart to people. What would that be?
Well, I don't have any secret, but I would think that you need to follow your inclinations, try to assess your talents,
Mm.
and see if you can bring your talents and your passion to solving whatever issue you can solve.
Yeah.
While I worked as an academic my whole life at a time when academics had a really good life,
Yeah.
my oldest son didn't go on even to college,
Mm.
and he's founded a successful business, as
Wow.
he says, and has done very well and supports many people who have excellent jobs due to his efforts.
Right.
So I think you can succeed in many different ways.
Right. Right. Well, that ends it for the first episode. It's been an honor. Professor Posner, you all can't see us, but he just exhaled a sigh of relief. But before we got this set up, we had to like do many different many different things. But the for those listening, the whole point of this podcast is to sort of explore human experience with accomplished people in different fields, but also just be very authentic and raw and unfiltered. And I appreciate Professor Posner for this opportunity of coming on and talking to me and us. And just a reminder, the life's work, or the description of his life's work, can be found in the book, Developing a Brain, A Life in Psychology. I just was granted a copy just now, and I'm going to read it. And this can be purchased on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very, very cheaply as an ebook, only $1.99. If you subscribe to Amazon Unlimited,
Right.
it's free.
Excellent. So I'll put this in the description for those that are interested. And once again, Professor Posner, thank you so much for indulging me. All right.
Okay. Well,